So when you start a business, it can be very tempting to take on outside money to help you accelerate your growth. We've built a business from the ground up, bootstrap, fully self-funded. We went from carport literally all the way to 400 staff, which we sold the business after 9 years. So we know the process and we know the pros and cons. But there are some things, and there's one really key thing that we may have overlooked doing it bootstrap. We discuss that in this video today. Okay, all right. So external funding versus bootstrapping your business, which basically just means self-funding your business. Now, Darrell and I have a lot of experience in building a business from the ground up, but today we want to talk about the pros and cons of each approach, right? So we did it one way, but we, over time, have kind of started to think maybe there is a better way. So let's kick off with, which one do you want to kick off with, Darrell? External funding or bootstrapping?
Let's start with the pros of bootstrapping, and then we can go to external funding and go into the cons of both after. Is that well? Yeah, go pros of both, cons of both.
So the pros of bootstrapping. Now, this is something we're very familiar with, obviously, having done that with Realbase. Now, the first pro, obviously, this is one that's quite easy to see, is you have full ownership and control. You have no one to report to. You make all the decisions without anyone interfering. So that could be you're building for long-term, you're building for sustainability and growth. So, I mean, that's literally the next point, which is sustainable growth, where you can focus on profitability rather than just getting numbers and chasing growth. Because there are businesses that literally you just spend to acquire users, even though you're losing money faster than you can make it. So that's definitely another pro. And then, the next one, Darrell, would be what? Less pressure.
Yeah, there's less pressure on you. Even if you were invested in by people, be it family or VCs, whoever's investing in you, even if they say there's no pressure to do anything, you're going to have the pressure to do what they want. It's just going to come with it. It's going to be in your head all the time. Unless you're a sociopath and you just stole everyone's money, you're going to feel it, especially if it's family. And the VCs, like, they're all in an industry where they see tens or hundreds of people a month making businesses. You're going to always have that thought in your head that, like, they know more than me. And it may not always be the case, because, like, they may know what's best for their business, and parts of your business can improve their business, but they're not going to be looking at the picture you're looking at. So there is always going to be a bit of pressure there.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
So
there's just
less pressure.
Note, delete that bit. I was meant to be doing less pressure. So if you go it alone, there's less pressure from other people to do anything that you don't want to do, which gives you a lot more freedom.
Yeah, which also leads into you can get stronger product market fit because you're not chasing growth. You're actually trying to refine the product so that you get people to pay, because you actually have to make sure that the product, people are willing to pay for the product, because you're self-funded. You don't have money, you don't have runway. So you need to make sure that you get paid for what you do, right? So you actually work on getting product market fit first, rather than just chasing users and then kind of seeing if you can get that later.
Yeah.
And then finally Sorry.
Yeah. And then that gives you much better long-term returns, whether that's for yourself and the people running the business, or giving the business more room to put money out there into the world. Because as you're growing, the more you spend on things, the more you can make long-term. And if you'll just have the freedom to spend it wherever you want. You can invest in your employees. You can invest equity out there because you have more to play with. There's a lot of really, really good things about having everything coming down to the wire of, like, how much money you make is how much you can spend out.
Yep, definitely. All right. So those are the kind of the pros of bootstrapping. And then let's talk about the pros of getting external funding. All right. So the first one that comes to mind is obviously faster growth, right?
Yep.
When you have outside money, you can spend on things now rather than waiting until you have enough revenue to do so. So that might mean you can hire better people, which is super important, right? You're always going to just be as good as your employees. You're never, if you can only afford bottom tier, unfortunately, that's what you get. When you have a little bit more capital, you can just go and actually do that. So you can grow faster, because by getting someone with the skills, you don't have to learn them. Or if you wanted to, outsource something, you can go and do that without having to learn the skill. So you can grow faster. And that kind of leads also into the access to expertise and networks,
Can
which
I
is
just
something
go
that investors
on faster growth? Just as an example.
Sorry?
Can I just go a bit more on to faster growth, just as an example? And also, you probably don't need to say, and that leads into through each one. And if Amrit's watching this, you can probably cut that out. I think it'll make sense, especially maybe we just put titles up like faster growth, this, and it can just be like a bit more rapid fire. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then for faster growth, with the money, you can subsidize your service. So this is similar to how like an Airbnb or an Uber would operate. They know that the customer is going to need to pay more in 10 years to do a thing, but they subsidize, they put all of their money into making it a cheaper service to gain massive market share. And that's how they use that extra capital to grow really fast, knowing that they can turn the prices up later once they need to, once they can no longer subsidize whatever their service is.
Yep, perfect. Now, another thing that the external funding does, which, because obviously there's investors, there's a VC, angel investor, or someone comes along. Now, these people are generally that's all they do. So they know a lot of people. They're really networkers. That's kind of their main thing. And they can bring in, other people that they know. They can bring in mentorship because they've seen companies succeed. And if it's in their fund, it's in their best interest to help you succeed because they want you to win. They want you to become a unicorn. And they can also guide you strategically. It's just nice to have it's like a sounding board where you can have someone else to bounce ideas off or strategy to figure out how. When you're doing it yourself, you don't have access to that.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people out there that could dramatically change the trajectory of your business that you wouldn't have the access to, you wouldn't have the doors open to. But because a VC is taking money from very high up influential people and they know other people who are high up and influential, most businesses can benefit from being connected to those by 1 or 2 degrees of separation.
Perfect. Yep. Now, obviously, this one's quite obvious, is you have less personal risk because you're not putting in your cash, your life savings, you're putting your house mortgage on the line, your assets. You don't have to do that. So you don't have financial risk in that regard. You're still probably the director of the company, so you do have, some liability there.
Legal risk, yep.
Legal risk, but not actually financial because you're not putting up your own cash. So you're giving away equity for that. But then you can sit and sleep a little bit better at night knowing that, tomorrow your house isn't going to go when your business doesn't go.
And this one is really, really important because you need to be in the right state of mind. Like when you're starting a business at the stages of getting funding, you need to be making good decisions. And making decisions with the weight of this is like my family's house on the line. You can sometimes make decisions in like a really reactionary way as opposed to thinking a bit more clearly about what you have to do.
Yeah, definitely. Another really, I think sometimes it's something, it could be overlooked because I don't think you really think about it, but the credibility that comes with having someone big invest into you. Because what that's showing is someone else believes in what you're doing. It's not just you saying, this is the great idea. It's like you've had to pitch your idea and go in, and then they are putting their reputation on the line by backing you. They're saying like, we as this company, especially with the bigger VCs, is like, we believe in your product. We actually believe in you. And you generally, it's going to be they believe in you, not even about your product. It's more about you. And then having that backing, and then if they do a media release, if something like that happens, it just instantly gives you credibility. It's also people can go like, oh, this business has some runway. They're not going to shut overnight. Because you see that a lot of startups, like they go for a couple of months and they can't fund it anymore. They need to go and get a job, whatever. That by having outside money, it just gives you that credibility and staying power, I guess, for at least as long as you're running.
We've seen that even in our business in interviews with customers who have asked, because we're in the like quite a core business functionality, people are concerned about switching because they don't know how long we're going to be around, where someone with VC funding, they would go like, oh, Y Combinator backed this thing, it must be around for a while.
Yep.
Whether or not that's a true sort of market perception, because a lot of backed businesses fail, is not necessarily the case, but it still gives the perception of backing and trust. And for your next rounds, it looks better too.
And generally, you're going to have 18 months minimum. Most companies kind of have 18 months runway. That's usually how you get funded. So at least you're going to be around for 18 months to 2 years if you manage your money properly. So I think it gives that little bit of credibility there. And obviously, finally, by having money injected at a certain thing, it's going to give you a higher valuation. Because when you're bootstrapped, there's no price setting. It's always just, I guess my business is worth something. But when you get given funding 10% at X valuation, your business is valued at something, right? So it allows you to get that valuation and then from there scale that up over time. And the funding they never want to go backwards. So they're always going to be, as conservative as they can, but every time everyone wants to increase, it's every round. If you're doing well as a business and your valuation keeps going up, it's going to accelerate faster than if you just got your first, right at the end, got your valuation. Yep. So you get a higher val, which is great. All good?
Yep.
Okay. Now this is the fun one. The cons of these both approaches. So we'll start with bootstrapping, the cons, right? So Darrell, what's the first obvious one that comes to your mind?
Yep. So slower growth, and this one, like you can hire as fast as you can make money, but you're also going to be more cautious with your spending always because you don't have a cash buffer. As you're earning more and more, you're going to be able to hire, but then making the difference, like I said earlier, the difference between hiring someone at 100K or 250K is very different for a business long term. But because your cash flow is short, like you've got a shorter runway, less cash flow, you're going to make shorter term decisions, which is I need someone to fill a hole in this area of the business now. You're not looking for the person who can fill that hole and then also make your business 10x better in 5 years' time. So you're always going to have slower growth in hiring. Your marketing, you're going to spend less on marketing, which means you're slower to get to market. You might get beaten by competition purely in this alone because they're spending more on marketing. You can have the best product. You can come out before them and they can still outmarket you and no one knows who you are in 5 years' time. So every piece of growth, everything you do will be underpinned by the amount of money that you're making currently.
Yep. I think this one actually really affected us when we were doing this because we were growing fast, but it takes time for revenue to catch up. Like you're signing customers and then only going to start paying you in a month or two. But in that time, they're already placing load on your team. Like every time you sign a new customer, we were in the B2B space. So every time we signed a new customer, it would bring a whole bunch of work, onboarding that we needed to do, but we didn't have the revenue and the capital to be able to fund the new hires and have them trained because it takes time to train people into your business. So we actually got capped. And then who we could hire was also capped. So if we wanted to hire a dev, we would have to look at juniors, which was great over time. But the problem is you have to train them over time. So it actually kneecaps you. Whereas if you had capital, you could be like, I'm hiring seniors or tech leads now. And I 3, 4, and 5 months prior to us hiring these people, so we can put features in so that we can support, so we can have less support staff. And like, there's a whole bunch of cascading effects that you don't see. You think, oh, I'm slower. It's sustainable growth. But sometimes it can actually really kneecap you and actually affect you. Because if you don't have the right people in play, your product looks crap. And you lose customers and your whole brand actually gets affected. So, slower growth is a con, but it can affect you in many ways that you don't actually really see.
Yeah, and you're going to have to take a whole bunch more leaps of faith. Like we took heaps of leaps of faith. Like there will be money coming in. Let's hire for that. Unless you want to let like service quality slip, which no one should ever really do. It was always getting ahead of anticipated problems as the number of customers increase. You need people, but you need them 3 months or 6 months before you actually have the money coming in. So those are like big leaps of faith that you take.
Yeah. The next one's obviously it's just a flip. I think most of the time you can find flips of the other approach, but the higher personal risk, we kind of touched on this already. You need to invest your personal savings. You're going to have to put out personal loans. Everything, the business isn't going to be big enough to be able to stand on its own feet. So as a director, you're going to be signing guarantees. And in the end of the day, like even for us, if we had machinery, that was under my name. Like if we couldn't pay that as a business, they'd come after my house. Or my apartment at the time. Super high risk because you never know what's going to happen. Boom. So very important. I think it's actually something that people don't think about.
Yep. We sort of already covered limited resources. We just go to competitive markets, I guess.
Yep. You can hit that one.
Yep. Yeah, I sort of hit this one as well. You're just going to get outspent. And unfortunately, product being the best product in the world isn't enough. Not if you're trying to like attack a wide market. If you've got people out there selling, you've got to pay them to sell. If you want to get people aware of your brand, you've got to pay to get people aware of your brand. And if you're in a market where there are competitors, which most people are going to be entering into markets where there are competitors, you have to play at the level they play at. Or like you can fight dirty, you can do things like in growth hacky ways, but either way, they're going to cost you money, and it's going to make it harder when you only have your own money to stand on or your own product to stand on.
Yeah. I think this is also competitive in another way, is sometimes there's a race and whoever is there first can actually do really well. And it's like
land grabs.
Yeah, when you're trying to do that, because there's some products where it's so hard to, like, in our one, once we had a customer, it was very hard for them to leave because it was a lot of moving pieces that you just didn't want to move. So if you could get that customer first and then do a good job, the odds of them leaving or churn was very low. We didn't have much churn. So if your competitor can outmarket you, even if they have a inferior product that you think their product's inferior, but they do a good enough job, it's going to be very hard to get them away. So you actually just lose that customer for years. Like we spent sometimes like 4 years to get a customer because the competitor was doing a good enough job. They were unhappy, but the pain to move was so high. And because they could get there faster, another thing that could be competitive is pricing. If you're in a price-driven market, people can say like, I'll just do it cheaper because they can, because they have more funding. They've gone to a scale. Like, if you're making a small percentage, but on a very big number, you're still making profit. So they can race you there, get the users faster and charge less. Now, because you're smaller, you have to charge more. Now you've outpriced yourself. So in a competitive market, being bootstrapped it can be quite a big kneecap.
Then you're going to get tired. That's the last main con to bootstrapping is you're going to get really tired. It's bad enough doing a business either of the ways, psychologically, not being 100% certain about anything all the time. But when you stack all of those cons together of you're not growing as fast as you wanted, there is a competitive market, you've got your own assets and family on the line, you feel like you could be doing better and resources, all of those things combined with if the money doesn't come in tomorrow. So say like Ken was saying, it's a competitive market, someone competing to you drops their prices tomorrow, you've already invested heaps of money. All of these things are going to stress you out more if you have no backing. Because even if you're making lots of money, the feeling of having someone behind you is going to give you a big psychological morale boost of like, someone believed in me. Someone who knows about business believed in me even is like, it's a huge step up where you're like, I think I'm failing, I'm a massive failure, but someone backed me is going to give you the drive to get through that potential burnout, where if you're going just bootstrapped, you don't know.
I've got a massive smile on my face because this one hit me probably the hardest out of anything. And I think by being bootstrapped, this really hurt us, was that we could never, like I said, I touched on it before, but it's like accessing the talent was a real negative for us, because what it ended up doing was carrying a lot of weight. Like every one of our team, like at the top level, had to really carry a lot to be able to kind of pull the team forward, because we just couldn't hire at the level we needed to, right? So by not doing that, it creates personal burnout, which for me, near the end of where we sold out, I hit really low, like mentally really bad place. And it was just purely because we just couldn't, there was no one else that could jump in and help and assist. And I'm just talking for myself. Everyone in our business had similar, like at the top, had similar stories where there was just no one that could come and assist and jump in and like tag team in. It was just like, it's all on you. So that is something that people go, potential burnout. Yeah, cool. That's everything. But I think when you're bootstrapped, there's just, because money can solve a lot of things. It's like, oh, we need more help. Let's can hire that position, or let's take this work from you and put it over here. And this is what we see in creator space too, right? Like creators burn out. It's because they're doing everything. But if you can get an editor, thumbnail design, blah, 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 this is just an example. But it just takes pressure off you. You can kind of breathe and you can have a second to just go like, okay, I can have time off. Like I can have a week off. When you're bootstrapped and there's no one else to step in, it's all you. So you don't get that opportunity. And we see this even in the creator product space, right? Where they launch products and it's just they burn out because they have to now run a business all on them. And you wake up, you think about it, and that's business and it's fine. But when there's no one to assist, you get that burnout hits real hard.
Yeah. And just for any of the listeners out there, keeping in mind that burnout is happening while the business is on a really, really good trajectory and it's making lots of money. So we're not talking about like while it's failing. That burnout and the fear and the pressure is all there, even while things are going really, really well. Like from anyone from the outside would be like, wow, that's going amazingly. And you're going like, I'm dying on the inside. That can happen. So con to bootstrapping. Yes. And then I guess the main thing from all of that is there's a lot of unknowns where we were bootstrapped. We saw it as a massive benefit or a strength. What we don't know is we had a really good result from that business. What we don't know is what the result would have been if we didn't have any of those drawbacks. How much bigger could it have been, which is something that a lot of people who bootstrap don't consider, I think, is like just how different it could have been with the money. Like maybe it would be worse, maybe it would be better, but you don't know. There is an unknown there of like, if we had the money for better resources, how different would the product have looked in the same time frame? What would the exit have looked like?
Yes. So it's the unknown, right? All right, here we go. So this is external funding cons. Now, again, this one we don't know as much of because we didn't do it, but we did touch on this along the journey. We did experience times, so we know the process. We did look for funding at a certain stage. So first one, obvious one, loss of control. So as you go through the stages, obviously pre-seed, seed, you're not losing too much, but every time you get an investor, you're losing a percentage of your shares. Now, as you get to Series A, people are starting to put in millions of dollars. And guess what? They want to have a little bit of guarantee around that. So they want to they want the equity, they want some board seats, and they want influence over decisions. Because they don't want you to just run off and do whatever you want, change your whole product overnight, because it's affecting what they've just spent. And they want to make sure their money is safe, obviously, right? So you're going to give away control, but you're giving away control for money.
And a bit of agility coming with that as well, because as you get to those later rounds, the people who invest are going to say, well, what are you doing for the next 5 years sort of thing? And like this is one that can really hurt you if markets shift and you have people expecting a certain thing and you can't change to the market, even though you know it's going to be worth lots more money that way. That can be a real risk. Or if they say like, oh yeah, you can change, but we just need heaps of research and documentation before we let you do it because there's a lot of money on the line. That can slow you down because you've lost not just control of like which decisions you can make, but how fast you can make the decisions as well.
Yep. And it's going to put on that kind of turn you into a corporate company faster. It's going to put in those practices and processes, which when you're bootstrapped and all agile, like Darrell said, it's going to slow you down. Now, this one for me, I think is really important as what I see. And I think this is why most people fail. I think this is the key thing. And it's the key difference between bootstrapping and external funding. And it is not understanding the value of money. So when you bootstrap, every dollar, you're like, oh, I need to consider how this dollar works. Is this dollar going to be spent there? The guys down there are spending $13 on something. Do we need that? Are they, do we need to spend that money or can we save that money? And it can be a really bad thing as well, but it also really helps you understand the value. So when you allocate resources, you really consider that. When you'll get just given a whole bunch of money, like a lot of founders do right in the beginning, they don't know what that's worth. They don't understand that like even 250 grand is a lot of money. Like go save that up in your bank account and feel what that feels like. It takes a lot of time.
As a business is hard.
Yeah, just to even earn it, right? So when money's given, it's easy to give away. And you see this with every example. It's like you win the lotto, they lose all the money. You get given money from the family, inherited, you lose all the money. Why is that? Because you don't understand the value of money and you don't understand how to make money. So I think this is a massive con of external funding. And I think it's one of the main reasons why people fail, right? They just go in, they just blow all the cash, and then game over. Got no more runway, you've burnt it. See you later.
Yep. Okay, the hamster wheel. If you choose to get on the hamster wheel, it might be very difficult to get off while it's moving. As you're growing as a business, you're going to have a lot of pressure from the VC. So if a VC invests in you, there's going to be pressure and timelines to get more money invested by a certain time, because they expect all of these things to follow a very typical path. And because the VCs are investing other people's money, there's certain criteria that they expect. At Series A, this much growth should have happened at Series B. And if you don't hit the checkpoints along the way, it's going to get progressively harder and harder, unless you are a Facebook and you're a complete outlier, which almost no one listening to this ever will be. It's going to be exceedingly harder every time you deviate off the accepted course. So even just before you mentioned having board seats on, there comes a point where they expect board seats, and investors don't want their money in businesses where they don't have board seats at a certain point. Everything you skip along that way, every checkpoint you try not to hit, there's always going to be pressure to do them, because it makes the result of the next round better. And then once you're on this scaling hamster wheel, it can be easy to get taken off course from what's actually valuable to the user to the scaling, money-making side of things, or what everyone calls the enshittification of these products, which is they will eventually go down a pathway where they're optimized for shareholders and not for the user, which is a big concern. You're always getting pressured to grow by a certain amount, by a certain time, or it looks bad. This will look bad for the thing. Keeping that in mind. Pressure.
Yes.
Extra pressure.
Super important. Hamster wheels are fun.
Yeah. Spin it up.
So part of being in the hamster wheel is that there's a whole bunch of structure which becomes time consuming, because you're now reporting to people. So you need to raise capital, which takes time. You need to sit with people. You need to show them the thing. You have to do the rodeo, the little, dance little monkey to get more money. And you have to then also, which actually takes your focus off of what you're supposed to be doing, which is building the product. Now, that being said, by having money, hopefully you've invested it well into the right people, so that those people can keep building your business. So that while you're doing the fun monkey dance nonsense, they keep your business growing, right? So obviously bootstrapped days, time consuming, annoying, because it's just you and maybe a co-founder trying to do it all, trying to build and also. But as soon as you have introducing people, that's now your role. That's fine. I think that's fine. Like, it can be a con. It's definitely a con. But if you have, if it's like, oh, cool, I got to spend 2 months out of the year doing that, but I've got someone else for the whole year building products. So I've lost 2 months, but I've got a year. So I've leveraged there.
Yeah, you've got to buy fully into it. If you're going to take it, you've got to buy in that it's worth money. And if it is worth, if all of the positives are true, the best thing for the business is raising more money, then that's where you do need to spend your time. And if it's not, then you just need to go full one way or the other. Yeah.
And I think it's another thing. It's like, if your business relies on you to grow, I like this, either Layla or Alex or Mosey, then you're not running a business. You're actually just employed.
Yeah.
The business should be able to run itself. And that's kind of the thing. So as a con, time consuming, annoying, but it's your job as a CEO or whatever, founder, to do that. You know what? You could even hire someone that helps you with that. You could hire someone who's like, cool, you're really good at raising
investor relations. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could hire that person. You could outsource that person with a contractor or whatever. So it's a con, but it is, let's leave it as a con, but you can overcome it. The next one is dilution of ownership, which is similar to loss of control. But every time you fund, you're giving away stock, which means you own less. Key point here. These are cons, I'm listing them, but I do want to give you the pro of it as well, or the opposite side, just to be fair. You're diluting your pie, but when you're bootstrapped, like we said, you grow slower. So your pie is small. So you may own 100% of a 100 grand company. You're amazing. As you grow, every round, they're valuing your company. So if you get 2 mil, first val, you go to 6, you go to 8, you go to 20. By the end, maybe your company's worth 50 mil and you own 10% of it, you're worth 5 mil. to grow the company bootstrap to 5 mil, maybe you never got there. Maybe it was too hard. So you're going to end up with a small piece of the pie. Like if you, one of the examples is like, look at how much Bezos owns of Amazon. The richest people in the world. How much does Elon own of his companies? Like the companies are enormous, but they got outside funding and they went through this, right? They're always raising money. OpenAI, Sam Altman, all those guys constantly getting funding. They're getting diluted, but the company is so big. So you own a small piece of an enormous pie. So you get diluted, but hopefully you're doing the right.
I think the net result, you're almost never going to be diluted by this process more than the benefit of having that money. Generally, I would say that's a rule, because the people investing, it should go hand in hand that the people investing at those valuations are pushing your value of it up more than you could push it up in the same time frame with no money.
Yeah. There's other things that are interesting as well. By taking on VC funding, they implement things like you need to have a employee share scheme. Like that's giving away equity, but what you're doing is you're able to then attract better talent, because you're coming with us. You own part of this company with us. You're growing. So it allows you, it puts in things in play, which we never really had. Like we gave away stock to some people, but having this like formalized process or roadmap, you can retain talent, you can get better talent, et cetera, et cetera. So diluting ownership isn't always bad. Like, yeah, sometimes you want to hold on to all of it, but like I said, you could own a lot of nothing. So something to think.
And keeping in mind that ownership isn't like most of the people investing in this context, VCs, family, whatever, don't want control. They don't want too much input into it. Like some smaller investors might. Most of these funds are like, don't talk to me unless something's going really, really wrong. They just want you to do a good job. They want a return on money. So you're talking about the final exit or dividend payments. You're not necessarily talking about control of like daily decisions. Like I'm only 20%, but you still make all of the decisions as the founder of the business. You're not losing ownership in the control of where the business goes in most cases.
Yeah. So the final one is, you have by bringing more people in, you have now the potential for being misaligned. So what you want to do and what an investor want to do and the goals may not align. You may start going, I love this business and I want to hold this business for 20 years. Whereas the investor's like, we have a roadmap to exit in 7 years. And that's the goal, because we want to get our money back, obviously. Like you either can buy them out with your own cash. Yep. So that's an option. As your business scales, you can sell your secondaries and buy them out. But if you're not doing that, in all fairness, they want to get out. And I think that's a perfectly fair thing. Like, because we also come from the other side now where we have the opportunity to invest in businesses. And the same thing, you want to put your money in, you want it to grow, and you want to take it out. Like, that's just how it works. That's the game. That is literally the game. So they're giving you the opportunity to do something really fun. And guess what? You can do it again. If you really love it, do it again. But you are going to have that potential for misalignment where you might be like, it's not the right time to exit now. And they're like, we need our money out because that's in our like they're getting money from other investors, and in their thing, it says after 7 years, your money's returned. Like I'm invested in similar things like this. After 5 years, the money comes back. And you're like, that's the expectation from the person putting in the money. So you need to go in knowing that can happen, and just be clear from the beginning that that's the thing, so that you know, so you don't kind of trick yourself to say, oh no, because I think the only reason
I'll convince them that I'll just hang on to it.
Yeah, you're not going to do that. And the thing is, like, being misaligned in something just means you haven't had the chat, or you haven't communicated that in the beginning. You haven't done the fact finding, because I think that's really the only way. Because by taking outside money, you should expect that to happen, because you have to just put yourself in the other position and go like, well, if I was giving money to a business, do I want to roll that forever? No. Why would you? It doesn't make any sense. So put yourself there, go, well, if I was investing, I'd want my money out. And it's like, cool, that's what's going to happen. So I need a plan for that. And either I'm going to buy them out, like good luck if you have enough money, or two, we're going to sell. And I'm going to get maybe not what I wanted, but also let's not be greedy, because it was worth 0 7 years ago. And you should have learned a lot of things to be able to do it again.
Yep. And any of that realignment that has to happen to get people on side is going to be a lot more communication required than you're expecting, I would say. Like you could probably ask people for more money to keep it rolling again, which is fine if you've got the numbers to prove it and the communication of like, this is where the market's going. This is why I think it's going to keep growing. You can always get more money and realign things. Just be aware that it's going to take a lot of time, especially because like these people aren't in your business the way you are. So you have to be able to communicate out to them exactly what you believe is happening and do it confidently enough that they believe you. Essentially, you're just selling snake oil. You're saying like, I think this is, and like, you've just got to get them to buy it. And it can be true or you could be wrong. It's fine, but you've got to be good at communicating it either way.
Yeah. Understanding like one party is purely black and white. It's not emotional. As a founder, you are emotional. You're emotionally attached to something you've created, and that's just what happens. Like, it's very hard to be a founder and not care about your business. I haven't seen that. Like, to be successful anyway, because you live and breathe this thing. It's your thing. And to be able to hand it off is hard. So you just need to understand that. And I think, yeah, just communication in the beginning, before you sign anything, before you do anything, sit down, think about it. And maybe you just want to build a business that's small. So let's talk about when to choose what. I think like you got the pros, you got the cons, but when or how do you decide what to do, right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about bootstrapping because we know that quite well. So like I said, or was about to get into, was if you're happy to build a really small, comfortable business, and it doesn't have to be that small. Like there are really good examples of self-funded people like Basecamp. You know, they've just fully self-funded and they're just, you know, they make heaps of money. Like they make tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. They're happy. They did that. But then you also got to understand, like, they did it at a certain time. The world's always changing. So just because someone else did it doesn't mean you can do it. But if you're happy to be a small business, you're like, I just want to be a single founder. I want to run a very small team. This is my goal. You can go that way, right? And it's definitely possible. You can have long-term profitability. You can control everything. And you're going to build a sustainable business. Now, that business may not be worth as much, but you're happy with that because you own more of it. So you do, like you could have a $5 million business and own 100%, and it's the same as if you had a $50 million business worth and you had 10%. Okay? So you're going to have to build a much bigger business, but it's a good option. I think it is. It's definitely a good option if that's your kind of goal. Darrell, do you want to talk about when to choose external funding?
Yeah. Firstly, when you're entering a market that is highly competitive, I think the funding can help massively. If you've got aspirations of going bigger, so like for me personally, I really like solving bigger problems, and the bigger the problems get, they seem to get more stressful but more satisfying. And you can see that like with a smaller business, there's a lot of like weird things about it. It's going to be harder to sell something that's never taken funding. So if you're happy with a small business, that's fine. Keeping in mind that when you want your nest egg to pay off, which most of like people build businesses to hope that they'll be able to sell them one day, it's going to be harder to sell something that's never had funding before, never had anyone say it's worth a certain amount of money. So if you pick up money, you could still have a small business because you could just be bad at growth in the small business that was invested in. But it can be a good idea to take money on when you know that the market is competitive, when you want to grow it really fast. So like if you need to subsidize something, so like if it's not your typical product, you're creating a new category and it needs to be heavily subsidized because no one really gets it yet, that's a time when you would definitely want to take money. So if you're inventing something new or you're completely disrupting, these companies do need money because it takes a lot of money to get past the inflection point of it actually making sense as a business. When else is it good to take money?
So I'll also
cut
add
this
in
part out, Amrit.
Edit a note, cut out that little bit when you're trying to think. So what I also think, this is the strategy that I would probably suggest for most people, is build a bootstrapped business first, right? You've built it, you understand business, you've proven success, you know how to do it. Then when you want to go for your second time, take on some money. Because what it's going to do is it's going to accelerate everything you need to do. You already know how to do things and you already know that these things cost money. So you can take on money. You're going to get better. You're going to get a better val straight away because people are like, you've proven yourself. you know what you're doing, and then you can go and grab it to go and run faster. It's also good to take funding in a market like is fast growing. Like it needs, you want to just jump on there and capture as much land as possible before other people start taking it. Like we touched on that. And you're comfortable with diluting the company. Like realistically, even though we bootstrapped our business, we still had to give away shares over time anyway. Even though we didn't get the money, we gave away shares for free because you kind of want to bring on, talent and retain it. Or when we did a merger and we gave away, we did a 50-50. So we lost instantly 50% to get growth, right? Now, if you had money in, you could have possibly negotiated or over time lost less equity, right? So you could have done that because you could have just gotten a much better position or built a better position without having to do a merger. So in the end of the day, you're probably going to lose equity anyway. But if you can get some funding to really accelerate and pour petrol on that idea, like I almost would also wait for it. Like don't get it when you just got an idea. Build something first, prove it. You can demand a better, like it's always about getting the best valuation you can for the lowest amount of equity and the best terms. So the stronger you are, the stronger your position, the better you're going to negotiate. So you're going to give away less. And then that way you can actually get almost the best of both worlds. You're going to get funding. You're not going to have to pour all your money into it. You're going to be able to grow really quickly. But I think it's something you can do the second time. Because the first time you're just a no one. You're going to get wrecked. People are going to give you 250 grand. They're going to want 20% of your company and, it's not going to go far. And you're just going to end up with nothing because you're still learning. So that's what I reckon.
Make the mistakes smaller. You're going to make the mistakes. So make them when you're smaller. Make them in a smaller bet, smaller product, whatever it is.
Brother can barely hear you, man. Your mic's too far away from your face. Yeah, there we go.
Make your mistakes smaller. So do it in that small business. Do your testing. Make all your F-ups and learn for the next one. And then when you're taking money on, you'll be in a much better position to make good decisions because you've sort of ramped up your ability to make decisions in a lower risk area.
Definitely.
And then the only other thing is like just consider the time horizons of everything because I think everyone has much too long-term a vision on how long everyone's going to be alive, how long a market's going to exist, all of those things. Speed is somewhat critical in these. Like every business sort of has apart from like the IBMs and stuff that like they manage to extend beyond this, most businesses have a pretty clear path of like ramping up and growth. And if you stagnate across any of that growth line, it sort of like kills the vibe of people signing up because they're like, oh, no one's really signing up to that thing. And then it will fall off at some point. Like most businesses have some sort of rise and fall within a 10 to 20 year period. And like, you've got to have a bit of urgency about it, whether you're bootstrapped or not. But that urgency should lead you towards like trying to get money is going to make things go faster.
Yeah.
So identify if you need to go fast.
Yeah. And finally, I think one other reason why you should choose external funding or bootstrapping is maybe just try the opposite to what you did before. Because in the end of the day, I think it's all about learning. It's all about having fun. It's all about, growing yourself and choose the road you haven't traveled, Yeah,
see what you can do with both.
Yep. Have a look. So, yeah, on the top of our mind, have a lot of experience in it. Wanted to share with everyone. Hope you enjoyed. And we'll catch you on the next one.